The government is suggesting that they're going to use e-learning, and that they want uh, this whole process of that this is in keeping with the COVID-19 problem. But then, how is this post-COVID? This is in fact keeping in the lockdown situation, where you want to keep students separated, where you want to keep teachers separated, where you want to not allow people to interact. That is not a post-COVID situation. In a post-COVID situation, you must have people interacting, but interacting under the conditions which the COVID virus spread has shown us are more meaningful for our social interaction now. This would mean definitely a change in the NEP. The NEP has suggested the closure and merger of schools in what they call the process of rationalization. And they have said that what we require is school complexes. School complexes would be up to 10,000 students in one particular place. You would have primary schools, secondary schools, higher secondary schools, all on one campus. And you would therefore have a lot more students. Now this, similarly, in colleges and universities, they are saying that we should have large campuses with thousands of students, up to 70,000, and that these should be huge interdisciplinary campuses where you would be able to, offer up to, as they say, in the mall style offer of disciplines, you would be able to offer an entire range of interdisciplinary courses. But neither of these two make sense today. We have seen that while these large complexes may be good for the corporatization of education, whether it is school education or whether it is university education, the larger the campus, the larger the number of students that are involved, the more profitable it becomes for the private investor. But in terms both of education and in terms of the post-COVID situation, neither of these is a meaningful suggestion. Neither of these is a meaningful solution to the problem. Educationists have been very clear right from the beginning that in order for education to be properly communicative, you need smaller sizes of classes, the student-teacher ratio as we talk about it. Even something like the RTE has said it should be 1:30. But otherwise people are saying even 1:20 or 1:15, the student-teacher ratio. Because in this kind of interaction, you have a better situation. Similarly, for higher education also, they suggest that you should have smaller and more intimate, more interactive schools and institutions in which students can pursue their graduate, postgraduate and research concerns with far greater and closer interaction with their teachers and with their peers. So educationists have always preferred smaller units, not these large corporate units which are suggested by the NEP. So the NEP should definitely give that up, because that is also in the health conditions now which we see in the post-COVID situation. These large complexes are of no use. They would be pedagogically they are weak, and health-wise they would lead to more and more and more lockdowns and more crisis situations. It is better to have, as we had earlier, the whole idea in school education. Educationists have always favored the smaller neighborhood common school. That is a school where all children of the relevant age group are able to attend a local nearby school. This is good for children because they are in a community of children. They are among peers who they know and who they are with in day-to-day interaction. And this is also a way in which children grow up with more confidence among their peers. So educationists have always preferred the neighborhood common school. Now, with these kind of schools, even if you should later have a problem, and these viruses, let us face it, are not finished. They're coming, they're mutating, these things are going to happen. So if you have smaller units, you are able to do health-wise also. Educationally, they are of course supported, but even health-wise, the whole idea of testing, tracing and treating will become so much easier and so much better when you are dealing with small units, with small schools, and with schools which are in the neighborhood, so that people know who and what is happening in the neighborhood. It is easy for you to tell who is developing symptoms, who is not developing symptoms, who may be asymptomatic, and so on. So these factors health-wise also become much better. As far as the university level is concerned, your graduate, postgraduate and research at any rate should be more intimate. This is better. But even your universities, when you have smaller groups, again, the health situation is easier to handle. You can use containment policies rather than lockdown policies. Lockdown tends to bring everything to a halt. Containment helps you to see where the spread is, to contain the spread, and also to treat those who may, to test, trace and treat those who may be in the containment zone. Now, this again becomes possible, but does this mean therefore that we offer less choices to the students academically? No, this is not the case. In fact, even when you have smaller interdisciplinary institutes and units, you would have a situation where the requirement, you would have a more defined interactive interdisciplinary position. It is not necessary for you to have everything on the board on one campus, 3,000 options. No, don't do that. Have smaller option groups, more well-defined option groups, and should you require different options, then you can have exchange programs and exchange interactions, as we used to actually earlier in the universities, and we still have it as well. So what we would say in what would be required immediately then in this situation is not distancing people, is not breaking the social interaction between those who are engaged in education. What is important is to have those who are engaged in education being able to concentrate on their specified areas, to work in smaller groups, and yet to be able to interact with larger groups should the need arise. So what would be required immediately is to proliferate, not to close and merge, but to proliferate schools, neighborhood schools, and institutions and colleges and graduate schools, to expand the cadre of permanent faculties to work in these schools, and to invest social resources into developing these schools and campuses where quality and diversity, the more schools you have at the higher level, at the graduate level, the more diversity you will have. We saw when we were discussing the e-learning that there is a tendency to homogenize. There is a tendency to make everything the same. We don't want uniformity. We don't want conformism. At higher education levels and at all school levels actually, we need the diversity of our society to be reflected. We need the diversity of learning to be reflected. And we need uh, a greater number of such institutions. This would, as I said, be helpful because we have the experience of the COVID-19. This would help us to realize that containment is a far better strategy than lockdown. Lockdowns are essential when you're looking at a large area. Containment is possible when you're able to identify smaller zones. So, where quality and diversity can become the hallmark of education once again, and where creativity and critical thinking can be encouraged among the students who are more interacting with each other, with their peers, with their teachers, with people from other disciplines, then this possibility is there. Such a system of education would not only be a health advantage, it would also ensure the spread of a socially enriching and transformatory system of education. Once the edu market is dismantled, let us not dismantle the schools. Let us not dismantle the institutes. Let us dismantle instead the education marketplace that is being created by corporatizing schools and corporatizing higher education. Once the edu market is dismantled, learning will once again become the prime focus of the system, and profiteering will not overwhelm disciplinary expertise.